One of the biggest sitcoms in America took place in a classroom full of kids nobody wanted to teach. It turned an unknown into a movie star. Its theme song went to #1. Millions of us tuned in every single week. And here's the strange part.
I did my homework, Mr. Kotter.
You could not make Welcome Back, Kotter today. Not for the reason you're thinking. For one, almost nobody is noticed. So let me show you.
See, I told you Mr. Kotter was our kind of guy.
The show that raised you without asking. If you grew up anywhere near a television set in the late 1970s, you didn't just watch Welcome Back, Kotter, you absorbed it. You knew the theme song before you knew you'd memorized it. You knew Up Your Nose with a Rubber Hose before you fully understood what it meant.
I was told by my agent to go up for this part where they were looking for street toughs.
You knew the wheezing, honking laugh of a skinny kid named Horseshack, the swagger of a greaser named Barbarino, the raised hand, and the ooh, 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 Mr. Kotter. For a few years there, 4 fictional teenagers from a made-up Brooklyn high school were about as famous as anyone on the planet. And then, almost overnight, that same show became something no network on earth would ever be able to make again.
Yeah, make a real good-looking girl.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. 3 sailors came to our house looking for you last night.
The show that quietly became impossible. And then the whole thing quietly became impossible. Not just canceled, not just dated, unmakeable. A show that was once the most quoted thing in America turned into a show that if you tried to pitch it now would die in the first sentence of the meeting. People think they know why. They're almost always wrong. So let's go back to where it started, because the real reason is hiding in the very first thing that ever made this show work.
This is a beautiful one. Do you mind if I smoke? The real story of Joan of Arc.
The room nobody was supposed to survive. The man at the center of it was Gabe Kaplan, and Kotter wasn't really a character he invented, it was a place he'd survived. Kaplan grew up in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, and went to New Utrecht High School, the same building you see in the opening credits, the one they renamed James Buchanan for the show. And here's the part most people never realized.
You don't know, you're not adopted. Who told you you were adopted?
Gabe Kaplan had been one of those kids. He'd been stuck in the remedial classes himself, the ones held on the top floor, in the heat, no air conditioning. Where the kids sweated so much, somebody started calling them the Sweathogs. That name wasn't a writer's room joke, it was real. It came from a real room full of real sweat. But the sweat wasn't the strangest thing Kaplan dragged out of that classroom and put on national television. The kids were.
Vinnie Barbarino.
The Sweathogs were real people. Years later, when Kaplan became a stand-up comedian, he built an entire routine out of those years, a bit called Holes and Mellow Rolls, where he did the voices of the specific, wild, unforgettable kids he'd sat next to. A hot-tempered kid, a cool kid, a class clown, 4 guys from 4 different backgrounds who somehow became best friends. That routine was so sharp that a producer named Alan Sachs looked at it and saw a television show. And once you know who those 4 kids actually were, you can never watch the show the same way again. A memoir with a laugh track. Barbarino wasn't invented. He was stitched together from a couple of real tough kids Kaplan grew up around.
You driving? You gonna give me a job? Yeah. An antique business? That's incredible, boy.
Epstein was based partly on a real kid nicknamed the Animal. Even Horseshack was a real last name. Kaplan wasn't writing characters. He was doing impressions of people he'd actually loved and been a little afraid of and laughed with 20 years earlier in a room with no air conditioning. That warmth you felt watching those kids? It was real warmth. It had a source. So understand what this show really was at the root. Not a concept, a memoir with a laugh track. Hold on to that because it's about to explain everything, starting with the night it took over America.
Miss Juanita.
The night it took over America. ABC put it on the air on September 9th, 1975, and it hit almost instantly. Part of it was the setup. Gabe Kotter comes back to teach at the school he barely escaped, gets handed the class everyone else has given up on, and recognizes them, because he was them. Every week, the sour vice principal, Mr. Woodman, wrote the kids off as hoodlums who'd end up dropping out or getting arrested. And every week, Kotter proved him wrong with a joke and a little bit of heart. But the setup isn't what anybody remembers. What people remember is the 4 kids. And those 4 kids didn't just get famous, they rewired the way an entire generation talked. The 4 kids everyone wanted to be.
Oh, that's good. I knew you'd understand. You know, because you're older and you're married, and your life is pretty much over now.
There was Vinnie Barbarino, the Italian-American heartthrob, all hair and confidence, played by a 21-year-old nobody named John Travolta. There was Freddie Boom Boom Washington, the smooth, athletic one. There was Juan Luis Pedro Filippo de Huevos Epstein. Try saying that 3 times fast. The short, hot-tempered kid who forged his own absence notes and signed them Epstein's mother. And there was Arnold Horshack, the sweet, strange class clown with a laugh that sounded like a donkey falling down the flight of stairs. They even turned their insults into a language the whole country started speaking. The language they made the country speak. They had catchphrases, and the catchphrases became a language. Up your nose with a rubber hose. Off my case, toilet face. The insults even had a name. The kids called it ranking, and it came straight out of Kaplan's actual Brooklyn childhood.
You know, you sound exactly like the guy that I fought last year. He's in the Guinness Book of World Records.
But if you think this was just a joke machine, you're missing the exact thing that made people love it. Underneath the ranking and the mugging for the camera, the show could turn on a dime and get genuinely tender. Kotter actually cared about these kids, and you believed it because Kaplan had lived the other side of it. 1 minute Barbarino's doing a bit, the next, a whole episode is quietly about a kid with nowhere good to go home to. That mix is why it stuck to a generation. But the piece that made it a phenomenon? Nobody planned it at all. The accident that renamed the show. The producers hired John Sebastian, the former frontman of the Lovin' Spoonful, to write a theme. He tried to rhyme something with Kotter. Nothing worked. Otter, blotter, daughter, dead ends, all of them. So he gave up on the name entirely and wrote something gentler instead, a song about a man coming home to the place he came from. Welcome Back. It went to #1 on the Billboard chart in the spring of 1976. It was such a hit that they renamed the entire show around it. The show was going to be called Kotter. The song turned it into Welcome Back, Kotter. Think about that for a second. The theme song was so good it renamed the show. And by the time that song hit #1, the Sweathogs had already broken clean out of the television screen.
Oh, and just one more thing. Up your pants with a hot romance.
Everywhere you looked, there were Sweathogs. By then, it was everywhere. There were lunchboxes, there were dolls, there was a DC comic book, 6 paperback novels, and, I promise you this is real, a board game officially titled the Up Your Nose with a Rubber Hose game. If you were a kid, you wanted to be a Sweathog. If you were a teenager, you already talked like one. But the moment you really grasp how big this got is the day it reached all the way to the White House, when the president fumbled their catchphrase. And it wasn't just merchandise. For 2 straight seasons, this thing was a genuine ratings monster, one of the most watched shows in the entire country. It got so big it reached all the way to the White House. In 1977, President Jimmy Carter told Kaplan to head back to California and say hello to the groundhogs. He got the name wrong.
It should look like it's being blown by unseen winds.
Didn't matter. The President of the United States was doing Sweathog small talk. And if a sitting president fumbling their catchphrase sounds wild, wait until you hear who showed up on set just to stand next to them. The legend too frail to share the stage. And there's one behind-the-scenes moment from those years that tells you exactly how high this silly little classroom comedy was flying. Kaplan idolized Groucho Marx. He did a Groucho impression on the show constantly. So the producers actually flew the real Groucho Marx out to the set to appear beside him. But when the old man arrived, he was in his mid-80s and simply too frail to perform. They took a few photos, quietly sent him home, and scrapped the scene. Think about that. Legends were showing up just to stand next to it. And right in the middle of it, a supernova was going off. One that quietly started the countdown to the show's death.
I did my homework, Mr. Kotter.
Well, that's a good boy.
The supernova that started the countdown. John Travolta was the youngest of the 4, and something was clearly happening to him that a half-hour sitcom could not hold. In 1976, he had a hit record of his own. In 1977, he made Saturday Night Fever and got nominated for an Academy Award. In 1978, he made Grease. In roughly 18 months, the kid who played Barbarino stopped being a TV actor and became one of the biggest movie stars in the world. That was thrilling to watch. It was also the beginning of the end, because his rise dragged a crack into the light, one that had been hiding in the show since the very first episode. The crack that was there from episode 1. Because underneath all the merchandise and the catchphrases, a quiet problem had been building the whole time. And it's the very same problem that, years later, helps make this show impossible to bring back. The Sweathogs were supposed to be teenagers. The actors were not. Travolta was the baby of the group, and even he was 21 when it started. By the final season, he was 25.
Sure, I mean, it helps you in any kind of performing, anything you're branching out on, doing something different.
Robert Hegyes, who played Epstein, was pushing his late 20s. Ron Palillo, sweet, goofy Horshack, was about to turn 30. 30 years old, playing a high school kid. And audiences could see it. Kaplan could see it too. He said it flat out. The show had stopped being believable. Kaplan knew exactly how to fix it. And what happened next proved the show was already finished. The fix they were too scared to try. He even had a fix. He wanted the Sweathogs to graduate and move up to a community college, and for the joke, have Kotter somehow turn up teaching there too. The producers were too scared to try it, so instead the show just aged in place. Like milk. Then Travolta left for the movies. Then Kaplan himself basically left. A contract war with the executive producer meant that in the 4th season, the star of the show barely appeared in his own show. They tried to shoot around it. What they were hiding was that Mr. Kotter had vanished from his own show.
But I'm basically a performer.
Hiding the fact that Kotter was gone. They promoted Kotter to vice principal and shot around him. Hallways, the schoolyard, anywhere they could hide the fact that Mr. Kotter was missing from Welcome Back, Kotter. Behind the scenes, it got ugly. The producer fired the entire writing staff and brought in a new team. Kaplan, disgusted with where it was all heading, shot 2 episodes of that final season and walked, still billed as the star of a show he'd basically quit. It limped to cancellation in 1979. And on paper, that's just the story of a hit that ran out of gas. But that is not why it can't come back.
Yeah, I got a more important question. If you got the money.
Yeah, I got $20.
Everyone blames the wrong thing. Ask most people why Welcome Back, Kotter couldn't be made today, and they'll hand you the easy answer. It's too offensive now. And on the surface, sure, you can see why they'd say it. The entire comedy engine was 4 ethnic types: the Italian, the black kid, the Puerto Rican Jewish kid, the naive outsider, bouncing off each other. In 1975, Kaplan was genuinely proud of that. His whole pitch was 4 boys from 4 different backgrounds who become best friends. That was the point. For its moment, that was progressive. Run that same pitch into a modern network meeting though, and it freezes the room in seconds.
I saw Dean talking to Orson Welles backstage tonight, and Dean is going to star in Orson Welles' new picture.
The answer? Almost nobody notices. A comedy where each of the 4 leads is basically a walking ethnic label. A show whose entire love language is ranking on each other, insult after insult. Yeah, you can feel the temperature drop. But that's the shallow answer, and if you stop there, you've missed the real one, the one almost nobody notices. Because it isn't one thing, it's everything at once. Watch this. Start pulling the show apart and you find 4 hidden pillars holding it up, and every single one has already been demolished.
Mr. Kotter, I just want to tell you how excited I am about this term paper.
The first 2 pillars are already gone. Start with the premise. The whole show is a comedy set inside what they openly called the remedial class, the dumb kids, the ones written off as unteachable, the ones Woodman just wanted to contain until they dropped out. You cannot build a laugh track on that today. We don't frame kids who learn differently as a punchline anymore. That single foundational joke, here's the class nobody can teach, isn't that hilarious, is gone. Pillar 1, removed. Now the casting. The very thing that killed the show, grown adults playing teenagers until it got strange, isn't something you can just quietly fix. The show needed unknown 20-somethings who still read as kids, discovered before fame, cheap and hungry and willing to stay for years. That pipeline barely exists now. Pillar 2, gone.
It's like, you know, being at home. You see Joe, it's like your old uncle, you know.
And those are just the first 2. The next one wouldn't survive 10 minutes in a modern writer's room. The pillar that wouldn't last 10 minutes. Now the relationships. Watch an episode with 2020's eyes. Students climbing through their teacher's apartment window off the fire escape. A teacher hanging out with his teenage students at his home, constantly as the warm heart of the show. There's even an episode where Kotter gets accused of harassing a female student, and the kids scheme to clear his name, played for laughs. None of that survives a modern network standards department for 10 minutes. Pillar 3, gone. Now the machine itself. Welcome Back, Kotter was a multi-camera, 1 classroom, live studio audience catchphrase factory, built to crank out 95 episodes and live forever in syndication. That entire kind of show, made that specific way, for that specific reason, has basically been dismantled by streaming.
Do you mind if I smoke? The real story of Joan of Arc.
Pillar 4, gone. But knock down all 4 pillars and you still haven't hit the real reason. Here's the one nobody ever says out loud. The show only ever existed because of one specific man's one specific memory of one specific room in one specific Brooklyn in one specific decade, turned into stand-up, handed to a network that still made this kind of thing, and cast with total unknowns right before the Star Machine found them. Pull out any single one of those and you don't have Kotter. And today, every one of them is gone. The Room is gone. That Brooklyn is gone. The stand-up to sitcom pipeline is gone.
Bedbugs will never got a dinner! Never got a dinner.
The network model is gone. The 20-somethings as teenagers trick is gone. So the real answer isn't that we got more sensitive, it's that you'd have to rebuild an entire vanished world just to hold the thing up. And that world doesn't exist anymore. Nobody realized it because everyone was staring at the jokes. The jokes were never the problem. The foundation was. And the moment you really see that, the show stops being funny and turns into something else entirely. And here's what makes that a little sad if you sit with it.
Brave and kind.
For a lot of people watching in 1975, Welcome Back, Kotter was the first time they ever saw their own world on television at all. Working class, outer borough, loud, mixed, broke, and funny. Not the polished suburban families TV usually handed you. Real kids who talk like the kids on your actual block. That's a big part of why people loved it so fiercely, and it's a big part of why it stings that the exact conditions that produced it can never line up again. And maybe that's what makes it land so hard when you go back and watch now, because the people are gone too, and one of them hid something heartbreaking in plain sight.
Yeah, Kotter, I made up a list of numbers you may need. Police department, SWAT team.
The detail about that laugh you can't unhear. Here's a detail that has always stayed with me. Ron Palillo, Horshack, that ridiculous, joyful, honking laugh that cracked up an entire country, he said he built it out of something devastating. He based it on the sound of his own father's breathing in the last 2 weeks of his life as he lay dying of lung cancer. The single silliest sound in 1970s television came out of the darkest room in a young man's life. You never hear that as a kid. You only hear it later when you're old enough for it to mean something. And one by one, time came for almost all of them. One by one, they disappeared.
You ask if you was in toilet training, chick.
John Sylvester White, the great sour Mr. Woodman, died in 1988. Robert Hegyes, Epstein, died of a heart attack in early 2012 at 60. Just months later, Ron Palillo died of a heart attack too at 63. Marcia Strassman, who played Julie Kotter and who once told a magazine she prayed for the show's cancellation, died of breast cancer in 2014.
At the time, I hated it. I really hated it because I was so underused.
Today, only 3 of the main cast are still with us. Lawrence Hilton-Jacobs, still working. Gabe Kaplan, in his 80s now, who walked away from show business to become, of all things, a professional poker player. And John Travolta, the 21-year-old nobody who climbed out of that classroom and never came back down. So did Welcome Back, Kotter really fall? Or did it just belong so completely to its moment that the moment took it along when it left?
Hey, Miss Tremaine, I don't got to perform in front of these guys. They shouldn't even be here.
What you're really watching now. I don't think it could be made today. I've laid out exactly why. But here's the thing. I don't think it should be. Some shows aren't failures when they end. They're time capsules. A specific room on a specific top floor in a specific sweaty summer full of specific kids that a specific man loved enough to turn into something an entire country memorized. You can't remake that. You can only remember it. And somewhere, right now, some kid is scrolling past an old clip.
What subject have you decided to do your term paper on?
Skinny guy honking with laughter, another guy grinning up your nose with a rubber hose, with no idea what any of it meant, or who those people were, or that a real classroom in Brooklyn started all of it. Lucky them, honestly. They get to hear Welcome Back for the very first time. And that's the strange gift buried inside a show that can never be built again.